Welcome, wanderers of the night, to this special Christmas edition of Petra's Dark and Dreamy, where shadows dance and dreams drift through the twilight. I'm Petra, your guide through this realm, where the boundaries of reality blur and the mystical becomes tangible. Tonight, we plunge into the depths of the unknown, exploring stories that shimmer in the darkness and ideas that echo through the silence. So, find a cozy nook, let the world outside fade away, and prepare to embark on a journey where the night is always young and the dreams are endlessly alluring. Are you ready to embrace the dark and dreamy? Then let's begin. For our special Christmas Eve edition, we are going to begin with 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. It was originally titled A Visit or A Visit from St. Nicholas, and was first published anonymously on December 23, 1823, in a Troy, New York newspaper called The Sentinel. However, it was written by a biblical scholar and professor, Clement Clarke Moore, for his children in 1822. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama, in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the roof there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutter and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, then away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. What Happened in the Snow Queen's Palace and What Came of It by Hans Christian Andersen. The walls of the palace were driven snow. The windows and doors were the knife-edged wind. There were more than 100 halls, shaped as the snow had drifted, and the largest of these extended for many a mile. All were lighted by the flare of the northern lights. All of the halls were so immense and so empty, so brilliant and so glacial. There was never a touch of gaiety in them, never so much as a little dance for the polar bears, at which the storm blast could have served for music, and the polar bears could have waddled about on their hind legs to show off their best manners. There was never a little party with such games as blind bear's buff, or hide the pockerchief for the cubs, nor even a little afternoon coffee over which the white fox vixens could gossip. Empty, vast, and frigid were the Snow Queen's halls. The northern lights flared with such regularity that you could time exactly when they would be at the highest and the lowest. In the middle of the vast, empty hall of snow was a frozen lake. It was cracked into 1,000 pieces, but each piece was shaped so exactly like the others that it seemed a work of wonderful craftsmanship. The Snow Queen sat in the exact center of it when she was at home, and she spoke of this as sitting on her mirror of reason. She said this mirror was the only one of its kind and the best thing in all the world. Little Kay was blue, yes, almost black, with the cold, but he did not feel it, because the Snow Queen had kissed away his icy tremblings, and his heart itself had almost turned to ice. He was shifting some sharp, flat pieces of ice to and fro, trying to fit them into every possible pattern, for he wanted to make something with them. It was like the Chinese puzzle game that we play at home, juggling little flat pieces of wood about into special designs. Kay was cleverly arranging his pieces in the game of ice-cold reason. To him, the patterns were highly remarkable and of the utmost importance, for the chip of glass in his eye made him see them that way. He arranged his pieces to spell out many words, but he could never find the way to make the one word he was so eager to form. The word was eternity. The Snow Queen had said to him, "If you can puzzle that out, you shall be your own master, and I'll give you the whole world and a new pair of skates." But he could not puzzle it out. "Now I am going to make a flying trip to the warm countries," the Snow Queen told him. "I want to go and take a look into the black cauldrons." She meant the volcanoes of Etna and Vesuvius. "I must whiten them up a bit. They need it, and it will be such a relief after all those yellow lemons and purple grapes." And away she flew. Kay sat all alone in that endless, empty, frigid hall and puzzled over the pieces of ice until he almost cracked his skull. He sat so stiff and still that one might have thought he was frozen to death. All of a sudden, little Gerda walked up to the palace through the great gate, which was a knife-edged wind. But Gerda said her evening prayer. The wind was lulled to rest, and the little girl came on into the vast, cold, empty hall. Then she saw Kay. She recognized him at once and ran to throw her arms around him. She held him close and cried, "Kay, dearest little Kay, I've found you at last." But he sat still and stiff and cold. Gerda shed hot tears, and when they fell upon him, they went straight to his heart. They melted the lump of ice and burned away the splinter of glass in it. He looked up at her, and she sang, "Where roses bloom so sweetly in the vale, there shall you find the Christ child without fail." Kay burst into tears. He cried so freely that the little piece of glass in his eye was washed right out. "Gerda!" He knew her and cried out in his happiness, "My sweet little Gerda, where have you been so long? And where have I been?" He looked around him and said, "How cold it is here, how enormous and empty." He held fast to Gerda, who laughed until happy tears rolled down her cheeks. Their bliss was so heavenly that even the bits of glass danced about them and shared in their happiness. When the pieces grew tired, they dropped into a pattern which made the very word that the Snow Queen had told Kay he must find before he became his own master and received the whole world and a new pair of skates. Gerda kissed his cheeks and they turned pink again. She kissed his eyes and they sparkled like hers. She kissed his hands and feet, and he became strong and well. The Snow Queen might come home now whenever she pleased, for there stood the order for Kay's release written in letters of shining ice. Hand in hand, Kay and Gerda strolled out of that enormous palace. They talked about grandmother and about the roses on their roof. Wherever they went, the wind died down and the sun shone out. When they came to the bush that was covered with red berries, the reindeer was waiting to meet them. He had brought along a young reindeer mate who had warm milk for the children to drink and who kissed them on the mouth. Then these reindeer carried Gerda and Kay first to the Finn woman. They warmed themselves in her hot room, and when she had given them directions for their journey home, they rode on to the Lapp woman. She had made them new clothes and was ready to take them along in her sleigh. Side by side, the reindeer ran with them to the limits of the North Country, where the first green buds were to be seen. Here they said goodbye to the two reindeer and to the Lapp woman. "Farewell," they all said. Now the first little birds began to chirp, and there were green buds all around them in the forest. Through the woods came riding a young girl on a magnificent horse that Gerda recognized, for it had once been harnessed to the golden carriage. The girl wore a bright red cap on her head and a pair of pistols in her belt. She was the little robber girl who had grown tired of staying at home and who was setting out on a journey to the North Country. If she didn't like it there, why, the world was wide, and there were many other places where she could go. She recognized Gerda at once, and Gerda knew her too. It was a happy meeting. "You're a fine one for gadding about," she told little Kay. "I'd just like to know whether you deserve to have someone running to the end of the earth for your sake." But Gerda patted her cheek and asked her about the prince and the princess. "They are traveling in foreign lands," the girl told her. "And the crow?" "Oh, the crow is dead," she answered. "His tame ladylove is now a widow, and she wears a bit of black wool wrapped around her leg. She takes great pity on herself, but that's all stuff and nonsense. Now tell me what has happened to you and how you caught up with Kay." Gerda and Kay told her their story. "Snip, snip, snurr, Bassy lure," said the robber girl. "So everything came out all right." She shook them by the hand and promised that if ever she passed through their town, she would come to see them. And then she rode away. Kay and Gerda held each other by the hand, and as they walked along, they had wonderful spring weather. The land was green and strewn with flowers, church bells rang, and they saw the high steeples of a big town. It was the one where they used to live. They walked straight to grandmother's house and up the stairs and into the room, where everything was just as it was when they left it. And the clock said tick-tock, and its hands were telling the time. But the moment they came in the door, they noticed one change. They were grown up now. The roses on the roof looked in at the open window, and their two little stools were still out there. Kay and Gerda sat down on them and held each other by the hand. Both of them had forgotten the icy, empty splendor of the Snow Queen's palace as completely as if it were some bad dream. Grandmother sat in God's good sunshine, reading to them from her Bible. "Except ye become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." Kay and Gerda looked into each other's eyes, and at last they understood the meaning of their old hymn. "Where roses bloom so sweetly in the vale, there ye shall find the Christ child without fail." And they sat there grown up, but children still, children at heart. And it was summer, warm, glorious summer. The Krampusnacht curse. It was the first Friday of December in Linz, Austria, a small alpine town nestled in the shadows of the towering mountains. The streets were already crowded with villagers preparing for the annual Krampusnacht, the infamous Krampus night that marked the beginning of the Christmas season. St. Nicholas would come to reward the good children with sweets, but Krampus, well, Krampus was something else entirely. Something dark, something terrifying. 12-year-old Lucas had heard the stories, of course. Every year, the older children would whisper tales of Krampus, The beast with the twisted horns, the glowing red eyes, the bloody fangs. And every year, Lucas would laugh them off, thinking he was too old to be scared by such tales. He had been good this year, he was certain of it. No mischief, no trouble, not even a single lie. He wasn't afraid of some mythical monster. But tonight was different. The first bell rang as the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the beginning of the Krampuslauf. The sound echoed through the streets, bouncing off the snow-covered buildings and sending a chill down Lucas's spine. He joined his friends on the corner, excited for the festivities. The town square would soon be filled with the terrifying figures of Krampus, their grotesque wooden masks leering down from atop their furry, black bodies, their cowbells jingling with each terrifying step. As they waited, Lucas heard the jangle of chains in the distance. He squinted toward the alley that led to the town square and saw a shadow moving against the backdrop of the setting sun. A figure, tall and broad, with legs bent like a goat's, moving unnaturally, dragging a heavy sack behind it. It wasn't just one Krampus, there were dozens. The crowd began to thin, with people stepping back into the shadows as the first figures emerged into the light. A dozen Krampuses, all with bloodshot eyes and gaping mouths, their horns spiraling upward like ancient tree branches, stalked toward the center of town. The air was thick with fear and excitement. Their chains rattled as they moved, and the sound of cowbells filled the air like an ominous warning. Lucas felt a shiver of unease. He didn't want to admit it, but there was something about tonight that felt different. The Krampus costumes were more menacing than he remembered, darker, fiercer, almost alive. They didn't just move through the streets, they stalked through the streets, their eyes gleaming with malice. "Don't worry, Lucas," his friend Felix said, nudging him. "It's just tradition, a bit of fun to scare us into being good." But Lucas could see the fear in Felix's eyes. The Krampuses were closing in. Lucas felt a sudden weight in the pit of his stomach. Something was wrong. Something wasn't right. One of the creatures, larger than the others, stopped in front of Lucas. It towered over him, its fetid breath hitting his face like a rush of warm air from an open furnace. The Krampus leaned down, its twisted horns nearly scraping the snow-covered ground. Its mask, pockmarked with ancient cracks, stared at him, its eyes wide and unblinking. Lucas froze.
"You were naughty this year,"
the creature growled in a voice so low it seemed to come from the earth itself. Lucas stumbled backward. No, he stammered, shaking his head. "I've been good. I haven't done anything wrong." The Krampus eyes narrowed.
"Are you sure?"
It hissed, its voice like a rustling of dead leaves. The sack it carried shifted. Lucas could hear something moving inside, a muffled sound, something struggling. The creature raised its birch bundle and waved it slowly in front of Lucas's face. The smell of wood and decay filled his nostrils.
"Are you sure you haven't been naughty?"
Before Lucas could answer, a sharp, high-pitched scream echoed from the other side of the square. A young girl, no older than 8, was running from another Krampus, her hands covering her face as she screamed for her parents. The creature reached out with a long, bony claw and grabbed her by the arm, dragging her toward the massive sack slung over its shoulder. The crowd stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch. Lucas's heart raced in his chest. His legs felt heavy. He had heard stories of Krampus taking children, stories that were always told with a wink, as if they were just that, stories. But the girl was being dragged away, her feet scraping the ground, kicking snow into the air as she vanished into the darkened alley. Lucas couldn't breathe. This wasn't a game. This wasn't tradition. Krampus was real. and he was hunting. His thoughts snapped back to the Krampus standing before him, its breath hot and foul against his face. The creature let out a deep, rumbling laugh.
You've been naughty,
it whispered.
I've seen the way you've acted. The lies, the pranks, the cruelty toward your little sister.
Lucas's stomach lurched. How could it know? His sister? He had been mean to her. He had ignored her, left her out in the cold when she begged him to play. He hadn't even apologized. But no, he had been good this year. He had to have been.
Liar,
the Krampus growled, and before Lucas could react, it struck him across the face with a bundle of birch twigs, the sharp sting burning into his skin. His vision blurred, but he felt the cold, wet snow pressing against him as he crumpled to the ground. The Krampus looked over him, its eyes burning with something ancient and terrible. Lucas could feel the weight of its gaze pressing into him, crushing the breath from his chest.
You weren't good this year, Lucas,
it whispered.
And now you will pay the price.
The last thing Lucas saw before he blacked out was the creature's massive sack swinging open to swallow him whole. When Lucas awoke, he was alone in the streets of Linz. The Krampuses had gone. The town square was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant ringing of cowbells, like a funeral toll. And then he heard it, a faint jingle of chains. Lucas turned, his heart pounding in his chest, but saw nothing. But he knew Krampus was still out there, watching, waiting, and next year, Lucas would be ready. He would be watching for the shadows in the snow, the jangle of chains, and the glint of red eyes in the dark. And he would never, ever forget that Krampus always comes for those who are naughty. Thank you for joining me tonight on Petra's Dark and Dreamy. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to show your support for the show. If you're one of the first 100 subscribers, you can request your favorite literature read by me, Petra. See you next time. Keep sleeping soundly. Keep sleeping soundly. Don't let me wake you. It's Petra. I'm stopping by to tell you why I use Buy Me a Coffee to connect with my audience and grow my podcast. As a podcaster, Buy Me a Coffee has been a game changer for me. It's the easiest way for my listeners to support the show directly, whether through one-time donations or monthly memberships. The best part is that I get to keep it simple and focus on creating content. I love it because I can unlock steady income with membership tiers and recurring support. I share exclusive content, behind-the-scenes moments, and early access just for my supporters. And there are no complicated setups or hidden fees for you or for me. For you listeners, you can show your love with a simple click and also get special perks, shout-outs, and bonus content in return. You want to support the show? Click the link in the show notes to support the show. And be sure to tell everyone that you love Petra's Dark and Dreamy. Keep sleeping soundly. Keep sleeping soundly. Don't let me wake you. It's Petra. I'm stopping by to tell you why I use Buy Me a Coffee to connect with my audience and grow my podcast. As a podcaster, Buy Me a Coffee has been a game changer for me. It's the easiest way for my listeners to support the show directly, whether through one-time donations or monthly memberships. The best part is that I get to keep it simple and focus on creating content. I love it because I can unlock steady income with membership tiers and recurring support. I share exclusive content, behind-the-scenes moments, and early access just for my supporters. And there are no complicated setups or hidden fees for you or for me. For you listeners, you can show your love with a simple click and also get special perks, shout-outs, and bonus content in return. You want to support the show? Click the link in the show notes to support the show. And be sure to tell everyone that you love Petra's Dark and Dreamy.